All right, Built on Green Tree activated a Sunday edition. One of the what do they call these quick hitters? Rapid react. I think rapid reaction is the vernacular here in the industry. Got my boy Kenny Mastrole of Mastrole Passing Academy, and I felt compelled to do this, Kenny, because I mean I was at the game yesterday, and I woke up this morning, and literally I'm thinking about what Cam Ward, not only what he did yesterday, and I get that it's Ball State, but honestly what he's done through the first 3 games of the season, how elite he has looked, how well he has played, all the different things he can do, uh, the combination of him and Shannon Dawson and the play calling and play concepts. And I know sometimes we get caught up in hot takeville, right, in this day and age of just putting stuff out there. But honestly, I'm driving up to work today and I'm just thinking to myself, this guy is playing at a ridiculous level, and the things he is doing are really absurd. And then, like, I know that Miami was really infatuated with him, when they brought him in. But even to me, I was like, is he even exceeding what they thought? And to be honest, I was told, no, this is pretty much what we were hoping for. We just kind of knew if we surrounded him with better talent, which is something you've alluded to, and putting him in a system he's comfortable with, that this is what would be possible. But Kenny, he's 11 touchdowns first in the country, just over 1,000 yards second in the country, 73%. I mean, what he's doing is, let me ask you, that's from my perspective. You're a quarterback coach. You study this for a living. Before we get into the details, just how have you taken in these first 3 games?
I mean, I love what I'm seeing. I haven't seen this really since Ken Dorsey played. I mean, when they were really kind of hitting, they had guys, they had the athletes, and the offense was running well, right? And they had a great defense to go along with it. But what you're seeing, and Miami fans should appreciate this, is you are seeing like rhythm, timing, things that would happen for a quarterback 2 years in a system, 3 years in a system with the same OC and veteran guys. You're going to start to see when he's making the big plays and they're hitting the ones that they should be hitting. It's the nuances. It's the little things that people talk about, like how does Aaron Rodgers see that before it happens? Or how does these guys, that's being in a system and studying and having the maturity and kind of the background. And that's what's being executed on Saturday. They're doing all the little things that they should be winning. But, the Miami, I think, of the past might have won that game 35-21, 35-14. And now they're blowing them out. And they're putting it together. So when they get into, like I said, tournament play later on into the season, or these games they're going to get matchups and they're going to get some teams best with their matchups, they're just executing on that high level where, they're playing consistent football right now. So when there is that lull, they're going to be able to work through it.
So let's start here. Yes, Cam is I don't even know the word. I might have to put this out there. I get the proper descriptive for what he's doing. I'll call it wizardry, magician-like. But I think it also does start. We got to give some credit to the offensive line. He sat in a pretty clean pocket most of the evening.
100%. Yes. I mean, Shannon Dawson is calling a great game. He's mixing up the run and pass well. He understands, like, he knows what they're going to do. He's seen Ball State. So some examples, they're playing like what's called a trap two, where they're trying to get a corner to sit and play like in between the slot and the outside receiver. And it's almost like they're high-low in that corner a little bit. Without high-low in the corner, Cam's recognizing that and hitting it for a big play, where he's calling the screen game at the right time in a bunch situation, and Cam's just getting it out on time. But they're doing everything that's kind of like it almost makes the defense look foolish, like they're covering ghosts out there. And give him a lot of credit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, one of the things too is, like, we always talked about this. Drew Brees had this like sixth sense to elude the single rush in the pocket, the pressure, to slide over and execute and make the play. And you're seeing that from Cam Ward. The O-line did an excellent job. I mean, his jersey was pretty clean most of the game, I think. And he was just able to make that one guy with a little bit of subtle pressure. He'd slide and make that throw. And one of those that was really obvious was that one on the corner. They had like a trips look and a real push it up the field as a very athletic tight end. Broke it to the corner. Cam faded off to his left, and the guy ended up being wide open. But it was a great read. And it was a great job by the line protecting him.
I thought there were a couple of things just watching the game back in the pocket. There was like that oval, right? That half shelled,
you want an umbrella look, right?
There you go. And that's why you're here, the umbrella look. But there was, there's always going to be some times where some pressure is going to get through. But the thing I like about Cam is that I think it was on the Arroyo play. He backed up a couple steps, right? He took like 2 steps back, retreated to create more time in the pocket to get that ball to Arroyo. And then like the next drive, he'll take 2 steps up, right? His ability to maneuver it's not just the scramble out. That on Arroyo, he just calmly, like you didn't see any pressing on his part, right? He just kind of takes a couple steps back, buys himself time, and delivers that ball to Arroyo in the corner. Or he moves up in the pocket and just dumps it off.
He does. And then there's other times where you talk about a lot of quarterbacks. It's like playing a small hula hoop, like playing a small circle. Sit in there, move your feet subtly, move your eyes. Don't get happy feet. Don't drop your eyes. And he showed a couple times where he'd go to one side, he'd work left. It wasn't there. He'd flip his hips back to the right, stay in that same position in that pocket, and he'd hit that third receiver in the progression. That guy checking up over the ball, pushing on the outside. Threw a couple of nice balls doing that as well.
There's another throw you really liked, and by the way, the arm angle on this is sick, but you could probably work through the play concept and the delivery. I want to say I think it's towards the end of the first half where he basically hits Restrepo. It might have been the third quarter, but essentially hits Restrepo like in between the intermediate and kind of deep middle, right? And then I think he pushes it into the end zone for a touchdown. But there are a couple of different things working on that play, in addition to the angle that Cam Ward's able to use his arm and deliver it inside of that window.
Right. Yeah, they ran like a trips look. I think they brought Restrepo down. So number one, like Dawson did a good job. He knew the look he was going to get. And then Cam and him on the same page kind of understood like they're going against a too high look, too safety look. The middle of the field, if they stay in that too high safety look, is going to be the soft zone. And then what Restrepo does is he works up that middle linebacker, past that middle linebacker. The middle linebacker, naturally in a lot of defenses, he's going to open to the three receiver side. So he opens his shoulders. And these are little subtle things that quarterbacks that are really good do well. They recognize or feel how shoulder angles are when DB's hips are turned a certain way. If that's like their backsides to the boundary and they've opened their hips, they know they're going to get the underneath stuff. So what he did was he just put that foot in the ground. He kind of looked to that post side safety or to that field side safety. And then he just felt that safety move and then looked over the middle and just slid it or threw it, with that little
slide. He might have, I mean, it was coming out from here.
Yeah, he just kind of like slung it from the side a little bit and put it right past that linebacker in that soft spot in the defense. And then obviously X did the rest to score the touchdown.
You said something about the amount of experience it takes to pull off something like that. And both those guys are 5-year guys. So the amount of reps each has taken to understand all of what you just explained there. The route running by Restrepo, the reading of it by Cam, and where to kind of sit and deliver the ball.
Absolutely. So this kind of speaks volumes to like guys that are coming up as freshmen, sophomore, even high school kids. I bet you they put an enormous amount of time in the off season on that field, on that practice field, right? Probably on Green Tree working.
So let me interrupt for 1 second. So I asked that question because I kind of asked, like, Cam has pretty much come in and taken over the team, especially and certainly the offense. And there was like maybe a very small feeling out process, but basically I was told, look, he came in and he basically said, this is when I'm practicing. This is when we're getting on the field. We're going morning and afternoon. Show up. And this is how we're going to work. So
he did.
Best be there.
So he threw a touchdown, and after the touchdown, I saw him on the sideline. He comes over, he's got the iPad, and he's already going over something with the guys, and he's just kind of working through whatever that is, talking about the details of the play. A lot of quarterbacks are just going to go over, sit on the sidelines. He's engaged.
No.
Constantly...
Sorry, one more thing. So that's what I do. That's where I am. And he comes and he puts his butt on the bench and iPad. He's hunting down the guy with the iPad. He wants right inside the play. He wants inside the playbook and wants to watch it back in real time. And his quarterbacks are together. And if he needs to, he'll step up and he'll pull a receiver over and say, hey, and whatever they're communicating, right? They're speaking their language. But he's going to seek someone out if he needs to either make a correction or they might change something during the game. Like there was one incident, in between series, he's talking to Sam Brown and he's just giving him some checks. He's like, hey, if I motion a certain way and they're playing a certain way, this is what I'm going to give you this. And that's what I want you to do.
Right. It's a little bit of that backyard football. It's like understanding and going through. I mean, I can tell you this, what I experienced as a player was when I was a freshman at Maryland, came in, we had a guy that did an excellent job as a leader, Okay, he was a baseball guy, but he took us to 17th in the country at one point, like 4-0, 5-0. We go in, and in the off season, he would gather the guys and they would put the work in. He would be like, the coaches couldn't be there. So I
Right.
see that same thing as what Cam's probably doing with these guys. So you've got some veteran receivers. He's directing it and telling them exactly what he wants, and he really understands the situations and all the concepts. So all that time that they're putting in the off season, you're just seeing it now. Like, it's the audition, right? I mean, they put in all those hours of work and timing, and that's where you start to kind of feel out those nuances like I talked about. You're not just executing the offense, you're starting to see the little things of what you guys spoke about, what you talked about, what you watch film. I mean, they're watching a massive amount of film, and he's in there directing it. And you've got guys that want to do it. I mean, that's the thing. You got a nice, strong veteran group of guys that are with a quarterback that's like really been, he's the catalyst of this team right now. Like I said, you've had a lot of good quarterbacks in the lineage of past history Miami quarterbacks, but nobody's that's been this exciting for a long time.
I would agree. So the other thing too about that, Kenny, and you would appreciate this is, so not only was it was basically manned essentially, like the demand was, I will be here at this time. I expect you to be here. So that's leadership. Then the other part is the nuance, which is he's been in a version of this offense his entire career, right? So now it's
Yeah,
you get on the practice field and it's these are the depth I like. These are the depths I like you to run this route at. This is the angle I like you to break at. This is the timing I'm expecting to see. Obviously, some of that has to be worked out. You can't just discuss it. But ultimately, he has such control over offense in terms of his understanding and execution of it that he can begin to work with those guys. And this is what was actually going on in terms of really getting them on the same page as him. Shannon Dawson joked with me like at the very, very beginning, like there were a couple of times they'd be running plays and Cam's expecting a guy to turn and the ball's whizzing by the guy's ear, right? Because they just
right.
weren't there yet. But ultimately they get there because Cam has such command, not only of command that you are going to show up and put in the work, but then number two, here's what I expect when we're running all these different concepts to get them on the same page.
Yeah, and he's earned that, right? So like someone like Emery that comes in and backs up and is going out into that game, he's not ready to do that, right? He's not in that position. That takes time. That takes like really studying the offense, playing in the system for a long time. But he's probably seeing, because one of the things that quarterbacks like, they don't want to, there's a fine line, right, with the offensive coordinator. You start trying to tell guys exactly what you want them to do or little changes. You're not revamping what they're doing offensively. You're just adding your own little tweaks of what you see through the quarterback's eyes. But Shannon Dawson's done a great job of allowing him to do that and play freely, but still within his system. So that is, I don't think fans see that enough. You don't see it till you're in the game. And if you're on the sidelines, you're listening to those little conversations that occur so that you're playing within the offense. But if you see something where there has to be a little bit of a change, or because essentially you're the coach on the field, the coach puts the play in, but once you go out and execute it, you need a guy that has that kind of history and that confidence and that leadership. But that all starts from the summer. That all starts from the spring and all those hours that he put in to build that trust level, not only with its teammates, but with the coaches as well.
So if I'm doubling back, I apologize, but I am really somewhat infatuated too with how Shannon Dawson calls a game. I know we've talked a little bit about his mentally and how he just approaches his quarterback and quarterback play in terms of not wanting a robot, to which you just alluded to. Like he's got to have some freedom inside the structure of the offense, but giving him the rope to do those things. But more so, what you've seen from Shannon Dawson, how he calls a game and the wrinkles and the looks and the motions and what he's doing to set up his offense to have ultimate success.
Yeah, I like what he's doing. He's keeping a well balance on the run and the pass, and they're distributing the ball. They're getting the ball out to a number of guys, 12 guys, I think, touched the ball this past Saturday. And the other thing is the protection has been excellent. They're probably, the tight splits, the way the line's playing and protecting. But he's done a great job of just like probably not running a million fancy plays, but he'll bring a receiver. They'll run bunch. They ran like a diamond shaped look where they had three receivers bunched up, and they're throwing quick screen off of it for a touchdown. They're motioning the back, so they're giving opponents and current teams a lot of different looks from a formation standpoint, but a lot of those plays are kind of the same thing. I mean, you've got a go route with an out route on the outside. You've got a crossing over the middle, getting into the soft spots of the defense. It's just hard as an opposing defensive coordinator to really identify and pinpoint. You got to watch a lot of film to start seeing where those
Well,
tendencies are.
isn't that supposed to be the beauty of the air raid, right? Is that in theory, if it's clicking at a high level, which has been so far, is that there are wrinkles and even if they pick it up, right? That your offense so well that you can deviate from the script ever so slightly or read based on what you're seeing to get to that place on the field. Green grass is what they call it, to still execute the play.
Absolutely, but where they're getting the next step, which is exciting, is they've got the run game, right? They have a
Right.
solid nucleus of running backs,
I think
and like I said,
that was a big part of the recruiting pitch to Cam Ward. Like, you've never had a running game, like we should be able to provide you.
yeah, I mean, he's basically lined up all the pieces for him to, number one, have probably arguably the best season at his college career, right? To take it to one step further,
Well, I would say
have an
certainly the
opportunity
best season on the biggest stage, with
on
the
the
with
biggest
the with
stage,
the with the
exactly.
with the best, probably the best outcome in terms of record, and then doing it at Miami. Right.
Right.
That's ultimately gonna be really, really big to be at this school on this stage with the kind of season it's looking like it's going to be right now.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the history of Miami. I mean, where you've got the Gino Torrettas of the world and those, you know,
Dorsey, Steve Wall,
Dorsey.
Kozar,
Yes,
Testaverde, Erickson.
where people were excited, and the big game of the year was Florida State, and you're waiting as a kid for those games to come on in the Orange Bowl, and was that kick going to be wide right again, that following year? So they're lining everything up for him in terms of, and it was a great move by him. I mean, you're pairing him with an offensive coordinator that's been around a number of elite quarterbacks. It's coached a lot of guys, been in a lot of systems, learning, and then now he's got the parts and the pieces, and he's got the guy to pull the trigger to get the job done. And Cam's just been a great job of just, playing within his offense, but adding that little wrinkle of being able to escape the pocket, avoid pressure, and then obviously, everybody loves those little bit of arm angle changes where he can just make pretty much any throw on that field.
So Emory Williams doesn't quite have that, all of those things, but he came in and played about as efficient as you can.
Yeah, he did a good job. I mean, if I was him, it's a great. It's basically not a red shirt year, but it's like a red shirt year where
ultimately, if things work out the way they should, it will be.
yes, and he's learning a lot. But the biggest thing you can't put a measurable on is he's watching a guy, an ultimate professional in front of him, a guy how to prepare, a guy how to lead. All the little intangibles that you need to be a successful quarterback beyond just playing and execute and just, hey, getting my turn and getting reps. He's getting valuable mental reps, just seeing the way the guy in front of him is executing the offense. Probably the conversation's great and the camaraderie between the two. I think he's pulling for him anytime he gets in, and then he's his second set of eyes when he's coming off the field. So yeah, you got to be pulling for him. He's the future potentially of Miami.
So I'll tell you two things, then I got to run. So to that point, and when Emory gets in the game, comes off the field, I don't remember which exact series it was. It doesn't really matter. I'll try and paint this picture. So Emory's now sitting on the bench with the iPad. Cam Ward standing behind him with his elbow on his shoulder pad, looking over his shoulder, going through it. Reese Poffenberger's to his right, sitting next to him. And Judd Anderson is kind of standing in front of them. But all four of them are engaged in communicating about whatever they were watching on the iPad and whatever series had just finished up. So that camaraderie you're talking about, and I think it speaks to the relationships that have been built on this team, and also, again, the Cam's leadership relative to he's not in the game anymore. He could just be wandering the sideline. He's standing right over his guy's back, helping him out.
Yeah, I mean, that just stems from what I talked to you about earlier, is like the Cam's history growing up, the parents, right? It's two solid parents. Mom was a coach in high school. Brothers and sisters played sports. I mean, smart kids, like went for their master's degree, driven. Cam as a young kid, bouncing a basketball, playing catch in the yard, just always wanting to have, like, always being around competitive situations, but team building situations. So, he saw his older brothers, he saw his older sister, like that kind of stuff. As you get older, I think that resonates to now what he's doing as a quarterback at the University of Miami. Like, it's more of that kind of yes, it's about me. It's about the team executing at a high level, but it's also about building that trust and that camaraderie because it is true. Coaches and like coach speak, they say you got to love each other, you got to love your teammate. That's important. When you get into deeper into this season and there's adversity, it's the guys that can kind of stick together and work through those situations that are going to come out on top.
Well, I think that's why Built on Green Tree is going to succeed also because I love you, Kenny.
I know. Feeling is mutual.
By the way, last thing on the way out, I will say this. There were probably, as good as a game he played yesterday, I think there were 2 to 3 plays he'd also like to have back where there were some guys wide open and he just didn't see it, didn't read it, whatever, but the numbers could have been even more ridiculous if that's even possible. They might have even come back and scored on those drives anyways, but there were a couple out there. I guarantee you he's watching it today going, I wish I had about 2 or 3 back. I probably would have had 8 touchdowns.
Well, yeah, if you listen to his press conference, I mean, he's very level-headed. Like he said, there's some throws he's got to have back. So you got to appreciate that. That's kind of that Michael Jordan kind of instinct where it's like, yeah, I might have went for 35, but there were probably 4 to 5 shots that I missed.
There were 2 or 3 very clear ones that I'm sure he's watching today going.
And that's great because they're going to come out with that same intensity next week in practice, and that's what you need not to have a setback like some of these teams do when they have a big win like that.
Well, going to South Florida Saturday night in Tampa, I think they'll be up there. It's good preparing for the biggest, and it'll be good to see how Miami locks and loads for this one because they know they're the hunted, and they're the hunted now, right? Especially up there, a primetime game on your home turf, so that should be fun.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're going to be ready to go. I'm sure they're blocking out the noise, and they got the right guy who's keeping the noise out for them.
Coach speak,
yeah, that's
Kenny,
right.
Coach speak, Kenny, Coach speak. All right, buddy, I got to run. Thank you. It was great.
Yep. Talk to you soon.